Hey, seventh graders, Mr. Farley here. Happy day. Hope you guys are doing well today. Today's screencast is titled Chapter 3, Section 1, An Era of Exploration. In this mini lecture, we're going to be looking at the first group of explorers who would come to the Americas and leave their imprint, and that would end up with our talking about the Columbian Exchange, which is going to be the topic included in our graphic organizer today, as you can see on the reading here. But let's take a look at Chapter 3, Section 1. To start things off, we are titled An Era of Exploration. We've talked about the term era in class before. An era is simply a period of time. So this section, 3.1, is going to talk about a period of time of exploration. Let's look at our vocab terms. Again, these are four terms in Chapter 3, Section 1, and there are four, so all the terms that you'll need to know for this particular section are on this mini lecture or on this worksheet. First term is colony, a group of people who settle in a distant land but are still ruled by the government of their native land. Second term is turning point, a moment in history that is marked by a decisive or an important change, turning point. Circumnavigate, the next word is to sail completely around something. In this instance, we're talking about explorers sailing completely around the world. And the last term that you guys need to know cold is the Columbian Exchange, the exchange of or transfer of goods and ideas between the Eastern and Western hemispheres that was started by the explorer Christopher Columbus. And when we talk about the Eastern and Western hemispheres, we're talking about different parts of the globe. The Eastern hemisphere over here on the right would be Europe and Africa, and the Western hemisphere over on the left would be the Americas, North, South, and Central America. So that's going to be the topic of our reading today. All of these vocab terms are also on your Quizlet site, and I also update your Google Classroom page weekly with each of the vocab terms that you guys will be quizzing on each Wednesday when you are learning remotely from home. Okay, so let's get to our reading now. And we're going to start with the top here right in the summary on this week's mini lecture, or this class's mini lecture. Although there is evidence that Vikings, Asians, and Polynesians visited North America before the 1400s, the voyage of Christopher Columbus was the first to have a lasting impact. So there were people in North America before, there were people in the Americas before Columbus, but Columbus's was the first to have a really lasting impact. Determined to find a new sea route to Asia, Columbus sailed west across the Atlantic Ocean. If you look at this here, this is a typo, and this should have been fixed by the book publishing company, but he did not sail east across the Atlantic. He sailed west across the Atlantic Ocean. So make that correction on your notes. He did not sail east, he sailed west. And after 2 months, he landed in the West Indies. Eventually, Columbus established a colony there, an event that would prove to be a turning point, affecting people on all sides of the globe. Within 25 years of Columbus's voyage, other Spanish explorers arrived in North America, following Columbus's path, really, each determined to reach Asia. In 1513, Vasco Núñez de Balboa crossed the jungles of Panama to reach the Pacific Ocean. 6 years later, Ferdinand Magellan set out to explore the Pacific. The survivors of that trip finally did reach Asia, and returning home were the first to circumnavigate the globe. That is, they were the first to sail completely around the world. And as part of the Columbian Exchange, which is pictured here in our graphic organizer, Europeans took gold, new foods, and tobacco back home. All right. So here are things that went from the Americas to Europe, Africa, and Asia. And this arrow here on the bottom is showing things that went from Europe, Africa, and Asia to the Americas, an exchange of goods, services, and ideas. So as part of the Columbian Exchange, again, Europeans took gold, new foods, and tobacco back home. And in return, Native American groups receive wine, sugar, wheat, and domesticated animals such as horses, pigs, and goats. You might remember from our discussion of the Anasazi. The Anasazi were really the first people in North America to see horses when they were brought by the Spanish conquistadors in the early 1500s. But the Native Americans also contracted deadly diseases such as smallpox and measles, as you can see in the diagram. For centuries, North America would be the settling, for centuries, North America would be the setting for both culture exchange and conflict between Europeans and Native Americans. So this Columbian exchange is going to result in all these things going back and forth between the Americas and Europe, Africa, and Asia, and from Europe, Africa, and Asia to the Americas. The Columbian exchange, the transfer, the exchange of goods and ideas between the Eastern hemispheres over here and the Western hemisphere over there. And this would be started really by the explorations of Christopher Columbus. Looking at our two questions at the bottom of the worksheet, answer the following questions on a separate sheet of paper. We're actually going to discuss these in class today. We're not going to be answering these on paper or on a Google Doc. How was Columbus's voyage a historical turning point? Again, when answering questions following a reading like we just completed, you'll want to refer directly to the reading. So how was Columbus's voyage a historical turning point? We'll pause there and we'll let you look at your reading, which I've also copied onto your Google Classroom pages, and students in the classroom will also have a hard copy. How was Columbus's voyage a historical turning point? And the graphic organizer skills question number 2, asks, identify at least 2 foods that Europeans brought to the Americas and 2 foods that they brought back to Europe. And in order to answer that question, you'll just need to look at your graphic organizer and determine what were some of the foods that were brought to Europe and what were some of the foods that were brought to America from Europe. Always, always, always refer to the document when asked questions about whether it's a reading, whether it's a chart, whether it's a graph.